Hello and welcome. Happy Monday, everyone. Look who we have here. I don't think there's one person in Australia that doesn't know Dr. Craig Harper. Can I use that yet?
No, you definitely can't.
Oh,
You can't call me. You can call me three-quarters of a doctor. No, I'm definitely not even that. But I'm on the journey. How are you both?
yeah, we're good.
Really
How
well.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm super old, but I'm still alive. That's a blessing, isn't it?
show us your guns. Yeah, Craig
No,
Harper's got the best guns of
no.
someone that's a
No, we're
non-body.
keeping with you two. Is this video or audio? Just audio or video
No,
as well?
this
Both. You
Oh my
can't
God, I would
hide.
have frocked up. I would have put on Lippy or something if I had known.
Well, as
Oh,
you said, you could do whatever you want in today's society, can't you? You can identify
well,
any way you want.
I can turn up however I want. Well, congratulations both of you on doing your own show. Go Figure. Is that what it's called? It's called Go Figure. It's great.
Called Go Figure.
It's
Craig.
clever. It's clever. I like the little play on words. I like the little kind of double meaning there. It's good. I'm excited to chat.
Well, we're excited to chat too, because you're only, Australia's #1 presenter, author, gosh, there's so much that's in there, self-regulator, sports scientist, and you also created Harper's personal training studios back in the night, just on 1990. So,
Yeah, that was when you two were just bloody, twinkles in your mum's eyes. And yeah, back 1990, 33 years ago, there were no personal training. There were no standalone commercial personal training centers. And so I think I set up the first one in Australia in Hampton, in the thriving metropolis of Hampton in Melbourne. I started PTing in 86. I started in gyms in 82 as a gym instructor. So, and then I employed around 500 trainers over about 25 years. So took a lot of my time and energy, but it was fun. It was a very steep learning curve. And as you would both know, when you work with people, helping them get in shape, of course, you've got to understand anatomy and physiology and nutrition and biomechanics and adaptation, but you also learn a lot about psychology and human behavior and resilience and what makes people tick. So it's been a fun journey.
And that's probably how you've evolved as well, because you got out of Harper's and now you're on this journey where, you're Australia's #1, you're on radio shows, you're on TV shows, and you're talking, and you've got your own, You Project, which is your own podcast as well. And you're like over 1,000 now on there.
Today is number 1100. So as we record this, our 1100th episode is up today. So I reckon pretty soon I'm going to be good at it. I'm going to keep practicing.
You're going to keep practicing. Can you remember the first time you did your very first one and what that was like?
Yeah, I can. Well, here's the funny thing, and this is maybe a good thing to, I don't know if you want to talk about this, but resilience and perseverance. So the You Project, we were a couple of months ago, my podcast, we were 5 years old. But before that, I did 3 podcasts that didn't work. So, that part of becoming successful or elite or becoming a high performer or whatever you want to call it is how many times can you fall down and get up? How many fuck ups can you make and keep going? How hard can you work when things don't work out the way that you want, and so on? So I did 3 shows. I probably did of those 3 different shows, about 200 episodes. And they were okay shows, but they didn't catch fire commercially. And then I figured out what I did okay and what I did wrong. And then we started the You Project. And even that, then for about the first 500 episodes, it cost me money because I had people working on the show. I have 3 awesome ladies who work for me at the minute. And yeah, it took us about 500 episodes before we started to reach a threshold or a tipping point where it was worth doing commercially. It's not only about the dough, but I have a business and I've got to pay people. So making a few dollars doesn't hurt. And now, 5 years down the track, we are at the moment, we're the #1 podcast on Nova in Australia, which is awesome. And we're very grateful, but, definitely not an overnight success, and definitely not, like you can't get good at the thing that you're not doing. So, 6 or 7 years ago when I did my first ever podcast, I was shit. I was shit. But how do you get good? You start by being shit. How do you become a black belt? You start as a white belt and get punched in the face and choked. Yeah. And then you train and you get better. Like when you two first lifted a weight, I bet I bet your understanding and your competence and your skill and your strength was like a 1 out of 10 compared to where it is now.
Oh, it was terrible.
100%.
Absolutely terrible. And one of the things is we didn't wait for perfection. We didn't wait to be perfect. We just got in there and fixed the fuck ups that we did along the way. And this is one of those things as well with you, like 700 episodes, 500 with one, another 200 with another, like 700 steps essentially to get you to You Project and where it is today and where it's going and being number one and all that sort of stuff. But how do you, like, a lot of the girls and the women on that are watching and following this as well understand that success isn't overnight, but how do you regulate through emotionally and mentally through those times where you are failing?
Yeah. Well, I think, what's really interesting is that with any, whether it's body shaping or figures or bodybuilding or, but with what you ladies do, getting on stage and presenting your body the way you want your body to look and getting the, I'm not an expert, you are, but balance and symmetry and proportion and definition and all of that stuff, right? It's a very physical process, but at the same time, it's very mental and emotional. Like there's a distinct cognitive and emotional component. How do I manage my body? How do I make, good decisions? How do I optimize my genetics? How do I be resilient? How do I stay focused and productive and proactive and effective when I can't be fucked? How do I be the person that doesn't give up when the other people would have given up, right? So that whole thing of failing, we can reframe that and go, because what's a failure? A failure is a label that we give an outcome, right? So I could have said, I failed in my first 3 podcasts, which that would be kind of accurate. Or you could say, I learned a lot doing 3 podcasts. That is also accurate. So I could say, I had 3 really big lessons over an extended period of time, and I learned what not to do and what to do. And also I built resilience. So they were opportunities to grow and learn. So it depends on, and I'm being honest to say, oh, they failed because they didn't work commercially. I'm also being honest to say they were growth experiences. I'm also being honest to say, well, I learned a lot. So they were lessons, right? So it's kind of a little bit of a cognitive or a psychological fruit salad. Of course you failed. Of course you fuck up. Of course you have bad days. Of course you feel shit some days and amazing the others. The challenge is not to be awesome. The challenge is not to be perpetually awesome or motivated or inspired. The challenge is to keep doing what's required to achieve over the long term, despite being human every day.
Yeah.
Right? This is literally my job, what I'm doing now, talking, teaching, educating. Do I have shit days? Of course. Do I fuck up? Of course. Does my ego get in the way? Of course. Does my bullshit get in the way? Of course. Do I have self-doubt? Do I feel like an imposter? Am I insecure? Do I look for approval? Of course. Not because I'm a bad human, but because I'm a human.
You're human.
And so how do we get better? Well, we recognize the shit that we're not doing well. We don't beat ourselves up about it. It's self-awareness, not self-loathing. And then we go, okay, what did you learn? Last comp, what did you learn? Last prep, what did you learn? Last workout, last conversation? What are your results telling you? I mean, as an athlete or as a business owner or as a podcaster or as a mum or as a whatever, a Ph.D. student, you're always producing results. And your results are your lessons. Your results are teaching you and telling you.
Yeah. And
your job is to pay attention and adapt and move forward accordingly.
Wow.
That's so much goodness in that whole, oh, wow. That's actually inspiring to hear that, because I think, in our sport, we do tend to be high achievers. We're really driven by those results, and we have almost a sort of myopic focus on getting to the stage. And it's incredibly important along the way. Your journey of getting to stage is the important part. I mean, your stage is 5 minutes at the end of that preparation. So what you just talked about then, and all of those little tools to take away about the little lessons that they're going to come up during prep. You've got to learn from them and then adapt, and then I guess keep moving forward.
100%. And the thing is that, you know, I think what's really, I don't know if you want this opinion or these thoughts, but I've spent a lot of my life around extreme athletes, bodybuilders, body shapers, figures competitors, AFL players, Olympic athletes, boxers, fighters, swimmers, runners, a lot of time. And, you know, sometimes if you want to be a freak in a good way, you've got to do freaky shit, right? Like, you know, if you want to be exceptional, create exceptional outcomes, kind of got to do exceptional things. But the challenge in the middle of that is that first and foremost, all figures, competitors, bodybuilders, runners, swimmers, athletes, netballers, cricketers, Olympians, first and foremost, you're all humans who are doing something athletic, right? So it's trying to, I think that the biggest challenge is not becoming an elite athlete or an elite performer on a stage, be that a literal stage like you girls or a metaphoric stage, but it's becoming elite and amazing and awesome while not becoming a fucking train wreck as a human. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So how could we put that into a process to download to, you know, both current pro athletes and also up and coming rising stars in the fitness industry, in the bodybuilding world? Like that makes complete sense, but how do you do that?
Okay, so dear, I'm going to say some things that I don't know how they're going to go. Am I all right? Am I allowed?
Yeah, go for it. This is
so. Here's what
unfiltered.
I think. And firstly, I'm going to preface what I'm saying, what I'm about to say with, for much of my life, have been wildly insecure, right? So I don't have my shit sorted totally. I'm better than I used to be, but I was just an ex-fat kid who became a kind of a wannabe bodybuilder who, you know, all of that. So obsessive, overthinking, blah, blah, blah. But I think one of the dangers of a lot of sport, particularly everything in the bodybuilding space, one of the dangers is that your entire identity and sense of self and confidence and self-worth comes from your body. Now that's a problem because firstly, you are much more than a body. You are not a body. You are not an appearance. You are not a size. You are not a shape. You are not a weight. You are much more than that, right? You are cognitive, emotional, spiritual, creative, amazing creature that happens to live in a body. Now, there's nothing wrong with having an awesome body. In fact, congrats. It's great. But I think we need to understand who we are beyond our body so that we can be balanced, who we are beyond our business, who we are beyond our weight, our shape, you know, who I am beyond, you know, you said all these nice things about me before and I appreciate it. But all the shit that I've done doesn't define me. They're really cool things. I've written some books and done some cool stuff and yay. And maybe in a year I'll be a doctor of neuropsychology or not. We'll see. But still, it's still not me. They're just things that I do. And the problem is that when what we do gets confused with who we are, we're always going to be insecure because that stuff can go. Because, you know, 59-year-old me doesn't look like 29-year-old me. Hopefully I still look okay and feel okay for my age and all that shit. But the problem is, you know, if you are only happy when you look a certain way, you're in trouble. So we need to have a purpose and an identity that's bigger than our sport and bigger than our appearance, because bodybuilding and getting on stage is a fucking breeding ground for insecurity, self-doubt, self-loathing, overthinking, eating disorders, body dysmorphia. And you girls know that, right? And I only say that because I love the sport and I love all the competitors.
Yeah.
But me, I care more about their mental and emotional health than whether or not they're 3% or 23% fat.
Nailed it.
Yeah. How do I do this extreme thing, but still be a good human and healthy? Correct. I'm not saying back off on the training. I'm saying go hard, be a fucking freak, do it all. But realize that, you know, what you do is not who you are. I mean, I got to the point where, and this is different but similar. So when I was 30, I had 5 businesses. And I was all about making money, building business, taking over the world. I had 5 businesses. I had 100 staff. All of my businesses were making money. I was making great money. I was writing for the Herald Sun. I was writing my first book. I was working in radio. All this great shit was going on. And from the outside looking in, I was a high performer and I was successful. But in the middle of all of that, I was just this ex-fat kid who was insecure, who didn't sleep well, who didn't love himself, who was constantly looking for approval and recognition, and nothing was ever enough. And I was trying to resolve emotional and psychological issues with biceps and abs and money. And it's just a fucking dumb plan, and it doesn't work.
You're still identifying as the fat kid from an emotional, unconscious even level. And on the outside, on the physical level, you were trying to compensate for that by creating your biceps and your six pack and, and presenting in a way that was essentially the complete opposite of where you were at. So what created that transition, that level of awareness? Whether was it acceptance? Did you go off and do, EMDR therapy, trauma therapy, or generational reprogramming, or how does one, take it to that step?
That's a great question, Lisa. And I don't think there's, by the way, all the stuff that I'm saying today, everyone, it's not a recommendation. It's not a prescription. Like, I'm just saying what I did and what I think. But for me, I kind of got sick of me, and I knew that I was essentially trying to resolve emotional and psychological issues with a physical solution.
Yeah.
Right. If I could look a certain way, then I'd have great self-esteem. I'd be popular. I'd be loved. People would, it doesn't work. And if they do want to be around you because of how you look, they're the wrong people. Right. That's the irony. That's the irony. And so for me, I kind of, like, honestly, what happened was when I was in my early 30s, so all this was going on, and I kind of got to the point where, despite how great my life was going, my external life was going, what everyone could see was going great, but what everyone couldn't see was going shit, right? I would wake up every night 5, 6, 7 times. I would have one of these. I would have a pen and paper by my bed, a spiral bound thing. I'd turn the light on. I'd write that thing that was in my head down so I could relax and go back to sleep. And then I'd do that 4 or 5 times a night. And I kind of got to the point where I thought, I'm living out of alignment. The way that I behave, like the things that really matter to me are not biceps and money. It's not that biceps and money are bad, or cars or a house, or that's not bad. But is this what? So I kind of had almost a cathartic kind of paradigm shift when I was in my early 30s about what I wanted the rest of my life to look like. So I went away by myself for 10 days to Queensland. I reckon I was borderline breakdown. And I went by myself. I didn't talk to another human for 10 days. I didn't take a phone. I didn't have a computer. I didn't watch television. I didn't read the paper. I literally spent time alone. I stayed on the coast. I swam in the ocean. I didn't go to the gym. I did some body weight stuff. I wrote. I just wanted to be. Sometimes you got to get away from the noise. Sometimes you really, really got to hit the pause button. It's very hard to be objective about the thing that you're in the middle of, right? You can't. A guy called Gerber wrote a book called The E-Myth.
Yep, no Gerber. Yep, no.
And he said you can't, he spoke about working on the business when you're in the business. It's impossible. You've got to get above the business or away. You need a perspective. Yeah. And so I got away from my life for 10 days, which doesn't seem long, but it felt like 10 months, right? Because I was alone 24 hours a day. And I was never alone 24 hours a day. I was always around people. And I just got a lot of clarity, and I came back, and within a year I sold all of my businesses except one. I enrolled in university. I didn't go to uni until, for the first time, I was in my 30s. I went and studied full-time at university, nothing online. I kept one of my gyms, the big one in Brighton. I started writing more, reading more, spending time alone more. And I was just trying to figure out who I was, you know, who I was apart from the brand and the business and the biceps.
It's so interesting because it's a theme that's come up with the Olympians that we've talked to in particular, and the women who seem to that we've talked to who have reached the ultimate level, which is, you know, to win the Olympia, like you know, Missy Truscott. She spoke about this very thing, about having gone through something really awful in her life, but then she came into alignment. So she's kind of gone through this metamorphosis, and she used those words that she found herself. And then we were talking to another guest yesterday, and she mentioned the same thing, Kelly. So it's definitely it resonates with me what you were just saying.
Yeah, I think we're all the same. It's great to, you know, it's great to have a good business or brand or body, and all of those things are great achievements, but you know that there's much more to life than just that.
Yeah, and if you're basing your whole identity on what you're looking like on stage at a certain point in time, you know, that isn't you. You know, that's you for 5 minutes on stage. Yeah, I think COVID actually helped me to do that. Like I'm sort of reflecting on my own personal journey, and I think my biggest emotional strides, or my ability to kind of manage myself better now going into prepping for my pro debut. And I've been talking about this with Lisa. It's like, I know myself now.
Yeah.
I've had that time away from competing back-to-back shows. I've you know, it was a forced step away from the stage, but in fact, it's been the best thing for me because I've been able to get that perspective.
I think ironically that to be a great athlete, especially in the body space, I think your priority is to manage your mind. And I think the great body is a byproduct of being able to manage your mind, because you think about, as an athlete, doing what you girls do. Am I allowed to say girls? Am I going to get in trouble for that, or do I need to say women?
Please
like
use the word girls. We like it.
You can call us girls, boys, whatever you want. We're all
right. I mean, here's the thing. If you girls can't manage your minds, then you can't manage your training. You can't manage your nutrition. You can't manage your focus. You can't be consistent. You can't train at the right intensity. You can't manage your recovery. You can't put together the whole process. You can't be strategic, right? So managing your mind enables you and empowers you to optimize your potential, to optimize your genetics and your resources, right? So, but I think it's a really underrated and undervalued and underutilized dimension. You know, we go, train well, eat well, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, and we never master our mind. That's a fallacy, but being able to understand my mind and being able to understand why I act and react the way that I do. It's good.
That's really interesting, because one of the things is that, like you said, people are like searching for perfection or mastery of something. And can you ever really master something? Because especially when we're looking at our cognition and our programming, because we're constantly evolving. You know, the person we are today is not the person that we're going to be tomorrow, or in 5 or 6 years' time down the track. We're going to be completely different.
Yeah.
When we're looking at neural reprogramming, like, can you take us through how that process takes place from a scientific point of view? Because that's essentially what we're asking, or we're doing ourselves when we're, you know, creating a awareness around our mind and doing that reprogramming and becoming better versions of ourselves from a
I mean, so reprogramming happens on a biological level, like creating new neural pathways, right? So when, for example, you start to learn to drive a car, you've never driven a car. Now you start to drive. Let's just pretend it's a manual car. So now you're using, in Australia anyway, for our Australian audience, So you're using a gear stick in your left hand, you're pushing a clutch with your left foot, you're hitting the brake and accelerator with your right foot. You're doing all these things, and it's a very unnatural, weird, new process. And there's a lot of fucking concentration and effort and sweat and anxiety. But over time, you do all of these things with repetition automatically, and the amount of anxiety and effort that was required isn't required eventually, which is why we can drive for half an hour and not even remember the driving bit, right? Because we're on the phone talking to Sally, right? So all of these things become hardwired, and the things that took a lot of focus and concentration, effort and energy and conscious kind of behavior, eventually it doesn't. So, but this gives rise to this other thing, which is identifying. So that's the kind of the neural pathway creation. And once we create those pathways, it's like swinging a golf club, swinging a tennis racket, like you two going in the gym and doing, a set of squats, or like the way that you do it, it's autopilot. You don't have to learn how to do a squat. You don't have to learn how to do a deadlift or a seated row or whatever. You're doing it, right? You've done it thousands of times. It's not new. You don't sit down and go, fuck, how do I do this? You just sit down and do it, while a lot of people would be constantly checking things and making, where am I in space and time? Am I moving the right way? You don't have to do that because it's part of your default setting now. But the thing for us is to think about this. What are the behaviors? What are the things that I should be doing that should be just hardwired into my default settings, should be part of my normal operating system? So for example, I don't smoke, I don't drink booze, I don't use drugs. I've never been high, I've never been drunk, and I'm not suggesting this. So for me, who doesn't drink or doesn't smoke or doesn't use drugs, that's hardwired into my normal operating system. Yeah. So when I'm in an environment where everyone except me is drinking booze and eating food that I wouldn't eat, it requires no discipline or no self-control or no effort because I don't do it.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, if I said I'm assuming neither of you two smoke, if I said, how hard is it for you to go out and not smoke? You'd go, it's not hard at all because I don't smoke, right? So it's trying to create not only a cognitive and emotional and behavioral operating system that works, but also one which is, this is just my new normal. So when your normal is training great, being consistent, eating optimally, not eating great for a comp and then eating shit for 3 months, and now I'm fat, now I've got a fucking which is such a toxic, ridiculous, unhealthy, take your foot off the brake a little bit, but this whole yo-yoing thing of totally, fixated and what's the word, extreme, and now I'm eating everything that isn't fucking nailed down. It's such a toxic, destructive way of being, So I go to people, what is it that you want to do, create with your sport, with your business, with your brand, with your whatever? What do you want to do, create? Now, what are the things that for you, based on that create, need to be non-negotiable?
Yeah.
What are your absolute non-negotiable behaviors? So when someone says to me, like they did the other day at a gig, a guy came up to me and said, how do you stay motivated? Like, you're 59, you're busy, you do lots of shit, you train every day. How do you stay motivated to train every day? Like, how do you do that? And I said, I don't. And he goes, well, that doesn't make sense. I go, it makes total sense. I go, because it's hardwired into who I am. It's like, for me, training, going to the gym and lifting shit is like cleaning my teeth. It's part of my normal operating system. I don't have to get focused or disciplined or pumped or excited. I just look at my schedule tomorrow and I go, well, I'm going to train at this time. There's no decision making other than what time.
And it's hard. That's the key thing as well, how overrated motivation is. So motivation turns the engine on, gives you a motive and a reason to do something, but it's creating that process and repeating those patterns over and over and over and over again. So therefore it becomes, hardwired, as you said. So you don't require the engine to keep getting restarted. You don't have
That's
to.
right. Success is about what you can do primarily when you're not motivated.
Yeah.
Because that Everyone's a killer when they're motivated, but most people are not motivated a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So with my athletes and the people I've worked with, I tell them, I don't care what you do when you're in the zone, because I know you're going to be doing what's required. I care what you do when you can't be fucked, when you can't be bothered, when you want to give up, when it's Saturday night and you don't need food, but nonetheless you're opening the pantry and staring at bullshit. I care what you do then.
Yeah.
You know, this is about, you know, what kind of person do I want to be? What kind of athlete do I want to be? What level do I want to be at? You know, and if you want to be a weekend warrior, that's great. If you want to be like me, I'm just a bloke who lifts weights and I want to be kind of healthy. That's my level. I'm cool with that. For you two who want to be elite, then there's a certain level of behavior and self-regulation that needs to come with that. And that's okay.
Yep.
I love that.
Yeah, and it's just being aware of it, I guess, as you're saying, and then creating, okay, this is my clear goal. This is what I want to do. Here are my non-negotiables. If I actually want to get to that, there is no days off the gym. There is no, oh, I don't feel like going there today. And you'll find that with most top level athletes, they're not the type of person to go, oh yeah, I just had a month or so off. You know, I just wanted to do some other things for a while. You know, there's none of those excuses with those people, because it is their non-negotiable.
Look, and also having said that, you know, for you to go, well, it's actually good for my recovery and my brain and my body to have a week off or whatever. That's
yes.
But that's very different to just making excuses, and that's very different to rebounding to the point where now I'm eating fucking 8,000 calories of crap a day and I'm going to put on 15 kilos and then I'm going to try to salvage that. And, you know, but again, maybe that sounds a bit judgy. I don't mean it to, but I just think if, you know, it's like I want to be a high performer. And I do everything. I'm not super talented, not super smart, don't have great genetics. That's me. My default setting is mediocrity, but nonetheless, I still want to do as well as I can. And then I go, well, I want to do as well as I can with podcasting, with research, with my PhD, with my business, with my corporate speaking. And so just like you would with competing on stage, you go, well, okay, so what are the skills, qualities, attributes, and habits of high performers? Well, they're not always giving up. Well, they're not always making excuses. They're not always critical of others. They're not always waiting for the right time. You know, so you two can't get better genetics, but you can optimize your genetics in a different way. I can't wake up tomorrow and be 29, but I can wake up tomorrow and be 59 and go, all right, well, at my age, with my genetics, with my resources, with my talent, with what I've got to work with, what's the best use of me? What's the best use of my body, my brain, my time, my skills? What's the best use? How can I do better at that? How can I learn? How can I evolve? Because there's, I mean, naturally with humans, there's a natural decline psychologically, or not so much psychologically, but cognitively, the brain, you know, function and physiologically, and bone density and muscle mass and strength and power and speed and all those fitness variables. But what happens is when we go, I'm going to chuck an intervention in, I'm actually going to determine as much as I can, I'm going to determine the way that I age or influence the way that I age. So whatever age you are listening to this, like I'm 59, I hope it doesn't sound arrogant when I say I'm not an average 59-year-old. And not because I'm special and not because I have great genetics, but just because I do things that make me somewhat atypical, you know, and anyone can do that. You can be 59, 69 and strong and lean, and your brain can work great, and you can still be learning. You can still be developing new skills and insights and awareness. You can still be growing and evolving, but that's not how most people think. Most people think, fuck, at your age, you should be, you know, I work full time and I'm doing a full-time PhD, right? You're not meant to do that. That's stupid. But it's like, well, who said? Who said? You know, and for me, and I definitely not something I would recommend, and I'm not saying anti-great at all, but you get to decide what you're going to do with what you've got.
Yeah.
I don't want to just fucking dwindle. my plan is not to just, and it's not to be a bloody superstar. It's just to say, well, I've got one body, I've got one brain, I've got one life, I've got one personality, I've got certain skills. With all of that, what do I want to do? Do I want to keep learning and maybe changing and adapting and improving and having fun and being a dickhead and riding motorbikes like I do and hanging out with friends and loving people and being loved by people and hopefully serving people and having connection? Yeah, I want to do all of that. Why wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
And that comes down as well to what your values are. And, what's really interesting is in my line of work, and I think, Craig, maybe we've spoken about this before in our coffee dates back when I was in Melbourne, up in the sunny coast now. And we've talked about, people's core values and, become the decision-making process around how they spend their time, what they choose to spend their money on and what have you. And for the best part of it, when I ask my clients for that matter or other athletes what their core values are, it's kind of like I don't really get a sound answer. It's more about what we spoke at the start of the podcast, which is they start defining themselves or by what they do. So what are your values? Oh, I'm a mum. I'm a bodybuilder. I'm a this, I'm a that. So if we are looking at, this is who you are, what do you want to do with what you've got? Part of that in my experience is being able to identify what your core values are. But, in Craig's world, how do you do that?
So, I mean, your core values essentially, really simply, are the things that matter most to you. When the shit hits the fan, when things go bad, when there's a catastrophe, when something massive happens in our life, I tell you what we're not thinking about: our body fat percentage. We're not thinking about the bench press. We're not thinking about, and it's not to say that training and our the way our body looks or works is not important. Of course it is. But, for all of us, there are certain things that really, when we get past the day-to-day obsession with whatever, fucking Facebook, Instagram, making dough, spending dough, looking a certain way, all that stuff, which is not bad. That's kind of just, but when we dig a bit deep and you go, all right, well, apart from that, like as a conscious being, as a person that's going to bloody walk around this big giant blue ball for 80 or 90 years, hopefully, like what actually matters to me, what actually matters. And again, there's nothing wrong with building a brand and a body and a business and making lots of dough, right? I'm not saying that's bad. That's not bad at all. But I don't think that's your values. I think that's your focus. I think for most people, even with money, for example, why do people want more money? Well, it's not about the money. It's about what they think it will bring them. What do you think it will do for you? Like you go, kids in a better school and maybe better house or car or less financial pressure or this, ultimately, well, happiness. It's like everything really comes down to, I think it'll make me happier. And so, like, for example, what are my core values? My core values are physical, mental, and emotional health. My core values are helping people genuinely, because I can be a selfish fuck. I'm an only child. I'm a bloke. I'm not married. I can be really selfish. And when I am, which is semi-regularly, I don't like me much. But when I've got a purpose bigger than me, I've got a focus bigger than me, I'm a better human. And that sounds kind of naff, but it's just true.
It's true.
It's just true. Why, I'm really busy. Why am I doing this with you guys? Because I think you're both great. I hope your show's awesome. And if I can help a tiny bit, I want to. That's why I'm here, right? I want to be able to help people, empower people, and not everyone will connect with me or like the way that I communicate or coach, and that's cool. But, I call it your internal sat nav. So your internal sat nav, my internal sat nav are my values, my goals, my faith, my beliefs, all of the things that kind of mold my decision making, shape my decisions, and shape my behaviors. And what happens is when my choices and behaviors, and for the most part, my life is a reflection of my values, now I'm living in alignment.
Bingo. Yeah, you're in alignment. That's like your spiritual health right there, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
it's that sat nav system under that. And so what, you know, there was a time in your life, maybe numerous times in your life, where you kind of had these moments where, you know, maybe a penny would drop or a whole bag of coins would drop, for that matter, where you recognize that you were out of alignment to that sat nav system. So when you're working with elite athletes and you're recognizing, you've recognized, they haven't recognized, but you've recognized that they're living out of alignment, what is one specific question that you thought-provoking question that you'll ask them that will, or leading question essentially, that will get or yield the response for them? Oh, okay, I get it.
I might just ask them what's something that they're scared of. What's a fear that you have outside of failing at your sport, but beyond that? You know, because apart from the fact that, you know, you're all athletes, people still want to be loved and valued and needed and connected and safe, you know? And it's, you know, I mean, I'm lucky in that, one, I'm an exercise scientist, so I can talk to people about, and I have a vast training background and all that, right? But also, you know, I'm in my 4th year of a Ph.D. in neuropsychology. So I'm kind of fortunate that I can span, you know, the psychological, the emotional, the physiological, and I'm no expert, but I can at least have conversations about all of it with people. And, you know, it's like, for example, with guys, and I'm being a little bit judgy here, but a lot of guys typically, not all guys, are not as comfortable as most women are talking about their feelings, about being vulnerable, about being honest, about, you know, so I open that, I go, I'm insecure. Not many dudes will say that, but I'm insecure. I'm not as insecure as but I'm still insecure. Do I want you two to like me? Of course I fucking do. I'm human. Do I want the listeners to like me or the viewers? Of course, right? That's not bad. That's not weak. That's being human, right? So it's just acknowledging what, and I do dumb shit. And sometimes I'll make a decision which is contrary to my internal sat nav because I want instant gratification, right? But all of this stuff is not, you know, this is not life threatening. This is just life enhancing. And we're talking about self-awareness. You know, there's a term called metacognition, which is thinking about your thinking.
Yeah.
And Lisa, you listen to me a bit, so you've heard that term, or you've probably heard it somewhere else. But metacognition is essentially you starting to become aware of, one, how you think, and also how other people think. And when we open that metacognitive door and we realize that where most of our living happens is not out there, it's in there. It's in that internal space of living of thinking and feeling and passion and drive and love and hate and curiosity and creativity and joy and excitement and trepidation. That's where we live. We live in that internal space, but where life happens is in that external space, you know. And then when you start to realize that what's happening to me or around me is interesting, but what's happening within me is really where my reality is created. And then when you start to, and this is now, we're getting way too deep for this conversation maybe, but fuck it. Let's just go there, shall we? Fuck it.
Go there.
You think about this, right? I don't know how many people listen to this, but let's just say 1,000 people listen to this conversation, right? What's amazing is that no one, not two people are having the same experience. So let's say hypothetically 1,000 people are listening to this. Well, there's 1,000 different humans with different backgrounds and different minds and different brains and different experiences and different lenses through which they view the world, process data. And so nobody's having the same experience listening to the same words in the same conversation. Why is that? You two and I right now, we're on the same Zoom call at the same time. We're all in the same conversation, but neither of us are having the same experience. You know, you two are both elite athletes in your field. You're both fit, you're both strong, you're both females, you're both interested in the same shit, but you're still having different experiences. And then that opens this other door, or that knocks on this other door, which says, fuck, where does my experience come from? Where does my reality come from? What role does the external situation, circumstance, environment, outcome, what role does that play? But what role does all the data processing center that is my mind, what role does that play?
Yeah.
You know, because we are largely our reality, our subjective reality is a byproduct of all that kind of processing that happens within.
So true.
That's so true. And it's such an impactful thing to actually say, especially with athletes, performance athletes, bodybuilders as well, where you're predominantly in this 3D reality, which is out here, and you're not essentially, and we talk about this a lot, don't we, Rose? Where you're not really in the, you know, having the emotional experience or the mental experience or the spiritual experience. You've got three elements there that, you know, we're a 5D kind of person. You're not having those experiences as well, because for the best part of it, we become disconnected, I think is the right word. And so everything that you've explained, people are probably going to go back and listen to this about 3 times to kind of get an understanding of it. But it's about digging into that space that is thinking about your own thinking.
Yes. And also understanding what consequence your thinking has. Like, let's say, for example, right now, this is bullshit, but in a hypothetical, let's say right now, Rose has a thought and thought. So that's something in the head, a mind thing. Rose has a thought, and her thought is, oh, fuck, I'm in danger. Right now, this is weird, but she thinks she's in danger, despite the fact that she's not in danger. There's no risk. There's no threat. But let's just say for some reason that idea comes into her head. Now, let's say for some reason she believes the idea. So now this becomes an emotion, or there's an emotion attached, which is fear and terror. And then there's a biological or a physiological consequence to the thought and the emotion. And that is now her breathing's faster. Now her heart rate's faster. Now her blood pressure's gone up. Now her sympathetic nervous system's activated. Now her endocrine system's kicked in. And now we've got adrenaline and cortisol and norepinephrine. And now Rose is in a stress state, right? Now this happens literally for some people 50 times a day. Yeah. Because they keep putting themselves mentally in that space and creating their own stress response.
This is so powerful, because the amount of times that you'll hear athletes say, I just can't get out of my own head. And, you know, they're experiencing a poor prep. They're experiencing, you know, a real difficulty in doing the non-negotiables, because this up here is telling them a whole bunch of negative stuff.
And now, let's say that for example, in that story, that there is no risk, you are in no danger.
Yeah.
Well, your body can't tell the difference between perception and reality. So if you are in actuality in no risk, no danger, your body still will react. All those stress things will happen because your mind believes it. And so in many ways, yes, there's a lot of autonomic systems that just happen, but there's also a lot of influence that our mind has on physiological responses. And if your mind is out of control, then you're going to be in physical you're going to be exhausted.
And, you know, and to the contrary as well, this is a physical sport. You're getting judged physically. You're not getting judged about how you think and who you are as a person. It's the physical, you know, are you symmetrical? Are you lean enough, big enough, round enough, short enough, tall enough, what have you? And I think this is one of the points that you've just hit that I actually wanted to touch upon, but you've made it, is the influence that this actually has on the way that your body physically looks on stage as a result of being in that stress response, of having that sympathetic nervous system on overdrive as a result of being in, you know, a perceived threat.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
I'm going to tell you both a story. I might fuck up a few of the facts, but this is actually research. This was done in Canada. I think it was a while ago now. But listen to this for the power of the mind. So, that the hunger hormone we colloquially call, or ghrelin, Grelin. You both know what that is. And for the listeners, that's like, we call it the hunger hormone, right? So when you're hungry, there's a fair bit of ghrelin floating around the old system. And then you eat a cheeseburger. I wouldn't suggest it, but you eat a cheeseburger, then the ghrelin kind of disappears, right? Because you've satisfied your body. So these researchers did this. Now, if I fuck up a little bit of this, the core of it's right. I haven't read the research for a while, but they did this. They did this study where they had a bunch of participants, and they had three groups of participants who were all hungry, and they gave them. Each group had a different milkshake, chocolate milkshake. And the first group had like a 620 or 40 calorie. So full fat, full cream, full sugar, full flavor, fucking heaven, right? Oh yeah, come on, giddy up. then the bottom group had like a low fat, low sugar, probably not that awesome, 140 calorie, right? Versus 600 odd. And the middle group had like middle of the road. It was about 300 calories. It was probably semi-fat milk or whatever. But anyway, so each group had a different meal, in inverted commas, drink. So group one had their full fat, high calorie meal. The middle group had a kind of halfway between 300 calories or so. And the bottom group had a low fat, low sugar, low calorie drink. Now, then they drank that, then they retested they got their blood, they retested their ghrelin levels. And as you would expect, so the group that had the high calorie meal / milkshake, their ghrelin levels dropped because they were more satisfied because they'd given their body all this food. The middle group, it dropped, but not quite as much because it was, it wasn't as fulfilling and there weren't as many calories. And then the bottom group, who had the low fat, low sugar, low calorie, their ghrelin levels didn't change much at all because they really, compared to the other two groups, didn't have many calories or much food. And so the physiological responses were as we would expect. But what we didn't expect was everyone actually drank the same milkshake. Right? There were no different milkshakes. All of the milkshakes were the same. Everybody got given the same stimulus or the same drink, but everybody thought they were having something different. Thanks. So it wasn't the food that went in the body, but rather the person's belief about what they were consuming that created the ghrelin response, one way or the other.
Unbelievable.
This is like, we were talking about this, like words really are magic, the power that they actually have on, our physiological, biological, and psychological, like just all together in one. That's incredible.
100%. 100%. Now I'm going to, all right. So I've just found it. It's called Mind Over Milkshakes.
Can you write this down, Rose?
I am writing it down.
So if you want to have a look at it, can you see that, Rose?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Hang on.
Over that. Yeah, that's it. Yep. Got it. Yes.
Awesome. Mind Over Milkshakes.
So it's called Mind Over Milkshakes for you listeners who want to check it out. Mindsets, not just nutrients, determine ghrelin response.
And that's such a powerful message. We could probably keep talking for bloody hours because I know that, Mr. Harper over here has got more YouTubes to do, more you projects.
I've got another 5 minutes if you want to go for another 5. But yeah, what it tells us is that the mind's bloody amazing. And it tells us that mind, emotions, and physiology, they're intertwined. They don't operate in isolation.
Absolutely. Oh my God. It's so powerful because it, for people that are listening, I don't know, what I take away from that is that we have another tool here to really hone in on and to actually get in touch with our minds because they're just so powerful. They have the ability for us to create our own reality.
And ultimately part of this center as well and part of this podcast is to be able to educate and create the right knowledge base for people to work through as well. And anyone that's at an elite level understands the impact that the mind actually has on the body. And so hopefully anyone that is listening to this as well can start actually also incorporating more of this stuff, more of this head stuff, mind stuff. And also, if you're not already, see the You project on the back here of Craig's, your little room, you need to connect with that space, because there are 1,100 episodes right now that talks about all things this, and people and human behavior and stuff and experiences and all of the rest of it. But Craig, mate, honestly, thank you so much for coming on board. It was like, I think it was almost a year ago, it was the opposite, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You were interviewing me.
I was, and you did a great job, and everyone loved you. What's not to love?
Oh, shucks. I appreciate that, Craig. But thank you so much for coming on. We'll finish the recording here, and we'll say goodbye to you shortly, okay?
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Rose. Thank you, Lisa. Thanks, everyone.